Today we're going to be looking at mousepads that are underrated despite its great performance. I've tried a bunch of pads in the past, in fact a little too much that I've had to stack them away in a closet, but over time I've slowly realized that there are pads that I keep putting back onto my table, and these are 3 that are not that popular anymore, but I still consider them to be really good. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. The first pad on the table is the padsmith Temple of Dreams. This is the remastered version and it's a control pad that's not been shown enough love in my opinion. Padsmith has been noticed in the past before, but this has been overshadowed by more successful pads like the First War and the more recent Empress Glass pads. The Temple of Dream on the other hand is a slower pad compared to what Padsmith are usually making. It's not to the point of being muddy, but it is definitely controlled unlike other pads that can sort of melt into the balance category. This pad is a little different though. With less stack friction than a lot of other control pads, you're able to start a movement relatively easily, allowing for better micro adjustments. This suits tech FPSs a lot because it's an integral part of the aiming needed there. This is then complemented by the higher dynamic friction, which allows your mouse to glide in a more smoother manner. This does mean that you will have to work harder in order to speed up your mouse swipes, so this will not be best suited for games with higher movement speeds where you need to continuously track a target moving across your screen quickly. The quality of this pad is also really well built like the other 2 that will be mentioned later, but the features that set this apart from the other control pads is the texture. I've never really liked abrasive surfaces like the Hien and Satin since I have really dry skin apart from my hands, so having the texture scrape across my arm and sometimes leaving the skin in the winter is pretty disgusting and definitely not good for the skin barrier of my arm. The Temple of Dreams however has texture, but it's not rough at all. It uses a polyester surface and it's a super nice feeling, and it reminds me of my old house with those hefty curtains. Moving my arm around actually felt like having the mouse on the canvas, and the best thing is that the pad does not get affected by humidity but also temperature. Some of the cloth pads feel really hot when I put my arm on it during summer, but this has a cool touch to it. It has some sweat resistance which reduces dragging on your arm during large movements. The base is good, stitching is low. This is one of my most favorite control pads right now. Onto the other end of the spectrum, speed. Glass has been getting popular over the last couple of years with SkyPad taking charge, putting out the original SkyPad and SkyPad 2.0 before any other competitors really took notice and made their own. Of course, the SkyPad was also my first glass mousepad, along with the 2.0 being one of my favorites at the time. When I got the 3.0 however, there were already some companies making their own glass pads, and now with Razer and Asus also having one, it's become a lot harder to simply choose what's the best. Although SkyPad is still the most popular, I found myself gravitating towards the Pulsar superglide way more. Every time I see this design, it just looks like they're trying to copy Supreme. It's kind of cool looking, but it's not even close to the design of the glaze. The texture of this pad is smooth, unlike the old glass pads that had this grainy frosted feeling, but there's a good and bad side of this surface. The good is that it feels nicer to swipe your arm across, especially when it's a hard surface, which makes rougher surfaces stand out more, but the bad thing is that because there's less texture, your arm can get stuck even harder when you sweat. When my palm sweats, I can feel the pad cling onto the moisture, and moving it is possible, but there's a noticeable tug to each movement. This can be solved with an arm sleeve, but for people that have palm contact on their grip and sweat a lot, you might want to look at non-glass pads. The reason why I picked this pad over the others is simply because of its speed. This sits right between a SkyPad 3.0 and the glaze, with the SkyPad being the fastest and the glaze being a more slower pad instead. The balance of the superglide makes it more consistent to use, best suited for tracking. Now what if you're looking for speed but don't really want a glass pad because of the sticky arm problem? Here's the third pad I highly recommend, the Energon from Lamzu. As you can see, it's pretty worn out since I've been using this so much for the past year. I've actually brought this out for one of my mates to try and he ended up getting one too. If I had to pick one mousepad without knowing anything about what I want to use it for, it would be the Energon. This pad is so versatile, you can use it on any game and it'll perform well. So first, the texture is smooth, not under the surface stitching like the Shogun from Infinity Mice, but still plenty smooth and not irritating at all to the arm. With 4mm of thickness, it's a comfortable pillow feeling, similar to what a GSR would feel at a lesser degree. The glide is speed oriented with very little dynamic friction for easy tracking and zero effort to continue a movement, but also a subtle hint of stack friction giving a little more stopping power to the user. So whether you're playing tracking dominant games like Apex or tech FPSs like Valorant or CS, this pad will still meet your demands for how you want to move the mouse, and it's part of the reason why I keep coming back to this pad because of how I can just slap it on the table and play whatever without caring. The only thing I wish this pad did better was the base. This is a solid base that doesn't move around when you put it on the desk, but it's using silicone, which would be the worst one out of the 3 on this list. The Pro version of this pad does use a Japanese pour-on base, but slower than the original Energon, more akin to a balance pad instead. In my opinion, I would still choose this pad because I like the combination of glide this pad has over the Pro. The base doesn't budge despite a not great material choice, and it's $15 cheaper at $35. This is basically on par with the value of the MPC 450 from Endgame Gear, while also being higher quality. So that's it for the 3 pads. If you're looking to try something new, consider picking one of these up. Depending on what you're looking for, you might be pleasantly surprised.